Hey guys, Ken Smith Fishing. So this is a video based upon a topic that's come up multiple times from both email and also comments on other videos. And that is when to move or when to think about moving from being a co-angler, or as my buddy Billy calls him, a co-pro, to a pro or a boater in tournament fishing. So I had a very unique opportunity. You saw Lou. So my friend Lou lives up in Annapolis, Maryland, and has a great channel called Beyond the Bounds. If you've not checked it out, I'll put a link in here to one of Lou's videos, and then I'll link you at the end of this to actually, so you can watch this. I'll stick a link in right at the end of this to Lou's channel so you can check it out. Does some really cool stuff. And Lou is going through the progression of, he was a kayak fisherman, he bought a boat, he fished as a co-angler, and now he's transitioning to a boater. So this was a unique opportunity for me to talk to a guy who's done this just in the last few years, about his thought process and then kind of my thought process on that transition, and also a little bit about some of what his experience has been as a co-angler, and kind of just a general conversation about the relationship between boaters and non-boaters in tournament fishing. So I think you guys enjoy this. It's going to be a two-parter. Let's jump right into it. Here we go. About when do you make the decision to go to the front of the boat? Correct. Right? So you had a good year, and just your second year of really fishing out of the back of the boat, you had a Costa 5th or 12th place?
Fifth place finish there, and then I've been fishing out of my boat in some of the BFLs, and I've made 2 regionals and got a 12th place finish in BFL. Doing all right.
So what's making you think now you want to go to the front of the boat?
Just the fact that I've been a co-angler for 2 years, I really set aside saying, hey, I'm gonna give it 2 years, and it's got to the place where I've done certain things and gone certain places, and I'm not saying that I'm not learning anything, but because you're always learning something on the water.
Yeah, you said you just had a great experience smallmouth fishing, right?
Exactly. A phenomenal fishing up there in Thousand Islands. Fished with the guy who won it, Dwayne, and fished with him on day 1, and then Eric Luzak, FLW Tour Pro, really awesome guy. And I didn't catch many fish behind him, but you know what? I learned stuff. And at that level, that is what I expected. I expected to go into a Costa and learn stuff and still learn stuff. And I finally was able to get that out of a Costa, whereas take the Costa that I did on Okeechobee. The second day of the tournament, my guy goes to the exact reed patch. Like I'm talking, like that exact tree that I checked in practice that I knew there wasn't fish there. He goes to that exact one. When we didn't catch fish, but it's kind of like saying, hey, your knowledge base of what you're doing is right on par with some of what the other guys are doing, exactly the same. You just got to put in the time. And one of the things you said to me in your videos was, once you're ready, you have to be able to dedicate that time. And here previously, I've not been ready to dedicate that time to like a BFL.
It's all about practice time.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, I've never thought about this. As fishing out of the back of the boat, did you see a big difference between BFL pros and Costa pros?
This is something I've thought about doing a video on solely myself, because no.
but most of the time, I fish both, right?
Right.
Until this year when I got mad at FLW and didn't fish Costas, I fished both.
Uh-huh.
So you think, generally speaking, it's the same group of guys, same level of guys? It's just the difference between writing a $400 or $300 entry fee and a $1,900 entry fee.
I've stood in line at weigh-ins and had other co-anglers be like, this guy was fishing for smallmouth in a foot of water, on Champlain, and had no clue what he was doing.
And you said at Costas?
At a Costa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen that. I've seen people with money come in, pay, what was it, dang near $2,000, and not have that experience level. And no way am I saying I'm God's gift to fishing by any means. I'm just a guy who loves fishing competitions and wants to get better at fishing.
Yeah.
And that's why I gave myself that 2 years of being like, no, I'm gonna put myself in a co-angler's position, which quite often sucks. It just sucks. sucks being a co-angler because you're like, man, that laydown looks great. If I could just throw into it, and your guy's gonna power pole down and he's gonna hit that, and then he's gonna move fast to the next one. That's his prerogative. That's what he needs to do. You can't fault a guy for doing that.
Well, and that's an interesting point. I think there's an ego thing for some guys that, how do you say that are gonna want to fish the front of the boat, even though they're gonna get their head smashed in most of the time. I mean, look, in a one-day tournament, usually not in a multi-day tournament, in a one-day tournament, anybody can win, right? I mean, at Rayburn, at Thousand Islands, at Champlain, at Bob Sandlin, anybody can win a one day. But there's got to be a point when you start looking at yourself and realizing that, well, here's the difference for me. When I quit trying to compete for a check and started trying to compete to win, there's a whole different mindset, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
And to me, as a boater and as a co-angler, but as a boater, there's a progression. When I used to club fish, my concern was catch a limit.
Catch a limit, beat the other guys in the club.
Right, well, or catch a limit, period. Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, I just want to cash a check, or I want to make top 6 in my club. And then now I could care less. So I agree.
Trying to show Ken how to do looping on this camera, so it'll save him from having to swap out SD cards 10 times a day, and he can just save on his editing time, because that's how I do it. But I might have lost some of the audio and there, but you know, we were kind of talking about the level of tour, you know, whether I saw a difference between BFL and Costa, and I, you know, as a co-angler, it's always going to be a crapshoot. You're just never going to know who you're going to get paired with. You could literally be with the guy who wins, and that's how I was at the last Costa. You could be with, you know, the guy who's got a lot of money and just wanted to do a tournament and, you know, has no clue. Didn't put that much time into it.
Or does not yet have the skill set, or may never have the skill set to go out and find fish.
Yeah.
Right? Which I'm proving to you I can't do at Rayburn for yesterday afternoon and today.
Notice how I didn't say anything.
Yeah, no, I've admitted, the guys that watch me know I'm struggling right now.
And you come
since my son has been born, I was off the lake for 3 or 4 weeks, and I lost contact, and I have really struggled. And truthfully, so Rayburn is so different for me right now. Anywhere in the last 10 years, you know, if you're fishing in September or October, you're fishing grass. Well, we had 10 feet high water this year, and it killed off most of our hydrilla. And when I say grass, I mean hydrilla. And so there's very, so the water's low. You can see the cypress bushes up here just about out of the water, or are out of the water. And any actual hydrilla in the lake right now is 5 or 6 feet or less, and it's just, you know, not terribly fishable right now. So this is a struggle for me right now. And there's not a great deep bite. There's a brush pile bite, but there's not a great deep bite. So I've struggled, but anyway.
Yeah, you come to the Potomac, I'd struggle to put down fish there too. It just, yeah, how the fishing is right now for us up there.
Yeah. So so you said basically same level pro, same level boater. I guess we got to be careful calling people pros, but same level boaters in the Costa versus the BFLs, and I think to some degree even on the tour this year. I mean, there were a lot of guys on the tour this year that just, in my opinion, and it's my opinion alone, probably shouldn't have been there yet. They got a sponsor deal to get up there, and you can look at the results. If you didn't finish in the top, well, if you didn't get a check this year, probably wrong place to be. But
I think a key difference is that I ran it over a lot. Normally, when somebody's going to pay that level of money, they're going to be at least truly serious about it. So you're going to have less times you're probably going to run into the guy who's just, doing some rando tournament and just, okay, I'm just going to throw my money in this $2,000 tournament, because the guys who are doing those tournaments understand that it's probably about a $5,000 trip.
And plus you're away from work.
You're away from work, you're away from wife, kids, you've got the gas for running all week. You got your hotel, lodging. You know, it equates to about a $5,000 trip, give or take, depending on how you're doing it. You know, food, all that kind of stuff. And people who are going to spend that money are going to be more serious about it. They'll probably have spent more time doing it than someone in a BFL who may come up and try to get 2 days of practice, 2 days of looking at the water, and then giving it a go. Yeah. So you're probably going to have somebody who's at least serious about it in a costa.
Well, and so in my opinion, and this is why I didn't start fishing costas till 4 or 5 years ago. If I can't be there the entire week, and ideally before that, but I've never gotten to practice more than Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, except here at Rayburn. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be there.
You should.
You're gonna get, unless it's your home lake and it's Grand Lake and you're gonna be able to run a milk run, you're gonna get your brains beat out pretty much every time. So
pretty much.
Let's pull over here out of the wind, and I want to ask you some more questions.
All right.
All right, so Lou and I are continuing our conversation about boater, non-boater. So ask me the question you were just asking.
Okay, so say the area that we're in right now, you know, you and I are fishing in a tournament today, and we come to this spot and we catch some fish over in this area. And next year in the BFL, as a co-angler, my boater brings me to this exact same area, or maybe even, you know, starts out here, and I say something along the lines of, hey, you know, I've actually caught them okay in this area, or I've caught them good in this area. What's your thoughts on that as a boater, as another boater?
So I would even say last week, right? You come in here and you fish a different tournament the following week. If another guy brings you in here, I wouldn't care. Now, what I would do if I were a co-angler, and what would strike me well as a boater, is if you called me and said, hey man, listen, I just want you to know that Saturday, that guy carried me into Mill Creek. It was a real similar area to where we fished. I did not put him on your key spots, but we fished that same area. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good courtesy, because what you don't want to have happen is another guy, one of my buddies, see you and go, man, you know, Lou had that boater back in that same area we were in last. And then I would, and not having all the information, I'm not saying that I'm a hothead, but you
jump
know,
to conclusions.
I would go, what the, you know, why was he in there? So no, I would think that's fine. Now, to that point, so let's say there's a brush pile on that point and that guy brings you in here. I would prefer if you didn't say, man, there's a big brush pile right over there. Mm. But I can't say if I was a co-angler, I wouldn't go, man, there's a big brush pile right over there. So
it's such a sensitive topic. You know, there's a courtesy to it, and it's hard to say there's a right or a wrong.
Well, and look, everybody, if you've ever posted any video about this, the one comment we're going to get from the trollers is nobody owns the water, and nobody owns the water, right? Yeah. They don't. But again, I think part of that also is, and we've talked about that some this morning, what do you want your reputation to be?
Right.
Right? Do you want guys to say, man, that Lou's a good stick, or man, that Lou's a hole jumper? And you and I have been talking about somebody that I think's a hole jumper down here, who, you know, I'm not going to say who it is, but there are guys who have that reputation, and that's not a good reputation.
I'd power pole down right here if we're going to continue this. Yeah, that's good lighting right now.
So so I'm curious. You made a comment earlier, which I think is really interesting. You have practiced with some of your guys before BFLs and Costas, right?
Correct.
So and I'll probably get 1,000 phone calls after this, but I'm fine with that. If a guy wants to practice with me, now I will also say to you, so for example, Andre in Louisiana, Andre's practiced with me before. The thing I know about Andre is he's not going to do what we just talked about.
So in the practice environment, if you and I were practicing, no way. My lips are sealed. I would never be like, yeah, we were just in here and we were catching, you know, 4-pounders. Especially if me and my partner, who I'm practicing with, no way. I mean, I even had that in one of my coaches where we went to the exact same area that we had practiced we'd gone to in practice. And he's like, hey, you know, if anywhere you want to go in this area, and my response was, man, my partner, he's probably going to be fishing this exact area, and I can't tell you anything because, you know, I'm not gonna mess up his chances, and you know, he's my buddy, and so there's confidentiality there that I would not ever think about breaking. But you know, a boater from a previous year who maybe took me to the same area, and I know, hey, there's a rock pile over there, because when I was dragging my Carolina rig across it, I learned that it was it. I can't unlearn things.
Right. Well, and you know, my opinion of this particular topic has changed. I used to, and I'm still somewhat secretive. Obviously, when you post up on YouTube, you're not that secretive. But just prior to a tournament, I'm still pretty secretive about what I'm doing, other than a small group of guys that I trust, who I know if I tell them something, they'll tell me the truth back. I'm fine the guy doesn't want to tell me. Just don't lie to me, right? don't misdirect me.
Yeah, right.
But what my opinion has changed about is, I've talked about this before. To me, a game plan for a tournament, and even a tournament day, is like putting together a puzzle, right? And you get the edge pieces first, and the more pieces you get, the easier that puzzle is to complete. So for me, I am over the worry of having a co-angler in the boat and possibly losing some information, because he helps me gather more data. We just proved it right there, right? I had a fish miss a topwater lure or a wake bait. You fire in there and catch a buzz bait. That's a piece of data I would not have had you not been in the boat with me. So I want that data. So for me, if you know, if there's a guy who wants to practice with me, and even to some point sharing expenses a little bit's nice too. But if there's a guy who wants to practice with me, I'm great with that. So by the way, guys, to that point, I'm going to the regional on Grand Lake here in a few weeks, and I'll be up there Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday practicing. If somebody wants to come up there and practice with me, give me a shot, because I'll have an empty back deck other than possibly a dog back there. So, and those dogs are not good fishermen. I mean, they're just not. They
see schooling fish and they go in.
They jump in. They don't concentrate. You can't keep them, you know, focused during the day. They see a bird and they bark. So, so we talked. So I'm assuming when you made the decision to go from the back of the boat to the front of the boat, you had decided that your technical skills, so your ability to put a bait where you want to put it, were good.
Yes.
I'm curious, you were a kayak fisherman before you were a boat fisherman. Do you think you got better skills? Because that's a whole different...
That's a good question. Yes, I believe going to boats has allowed me to vastly expand my fishing abilities, my fishing knowledge. Just being able to, not only that, to when you're in a kayak, you're glued into an area, and you can pick apart an area and catch fish, but you can't really do a full, I mean, you can pattern fish sometimes, but when you can look at a map and be like, all right, I can run here now and replicate this pattern, and here now and replicate that pattern, that's really hard to do in a kayak sometimes, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Depending on how large the body of water is. Now, there are some kayak anglers out there who will mop the floor with people in boats, and they probably don't want to hear that, but you know what? That's how good some of these guys are. When you're pulling up...
Oh, you're super sneaky too.
Well, you're pulling up 20-pound, you know, plus stringers from a kayak, you know, on places like Kentucky Lake and things like that. You can't...
Holy cow.
I mean...
Wait, are we talking about those jumping carp, or are we talking about
carp,
bass?
right? But because you can get out there and experience things, but you get to experience just this little portion, right? Like I wouldn't get to experience all of Sam Rayburn in a day, or even half of it, right? But I can do that in a boat, and I can go, you know, fish
Which can
trees,
also be detrimental,
right? It can be very detrimental if you get on that thing too much. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I've learned, is that, you know, in my first year that I was doing tournaments, I got on that a little too much. And I didn't just settle down and fish through stuff. And but you know, and that's what you can do in a kayak, because when you get to an area, you're in that area. It's not like, oh, let me run 5 miles up river.
How long did you fish out of kayak?
I did about 3 years.
How in the world do you pitch from a seated position? So did you have shorter rods when you fished out of kayak?
I actually went against the grain. I had longer rods.
Why?
For all the reasons people say you want longer rods. You
Fish
make
just
longer.
blew up.